Thanks for joining us today for the demo of State Farm, where we're going to talk a little bit about our extreme reality scaled products and the journey that got us there. I'm Tacha Gregory. I'm a technology director at State Farm, and I'm responsible for leading the digital transformation. In addition, I also lead a large footprint of UX professionals, user experience, that really help design and think about mobile capabilities. I also have responsibility over mobile enablement, which also encompasses XR. And with me today, I have my technology manager that leads our product canvas for extreme reality. So Matt?
Hello, everybody. As Tasha mentioned, my name is Matt Burns. I have been in the industry for about just over 16 years now. I have a background as a developer, and now I'm leading technical products for probably about the past 3 years now. And of course, what we're going to be discussing today is one of my products, which is my XR team. So virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality, and really how we've adopted that at State Farm and really going through some of those use cases.
Thanks, Matt. So some of the learning objectives that you can walk away with today is really the XR journey and the adoption for what we went through as a large enterprise, leveraging the embedded mobile market for interactive and what really falls into that when you're thinking about augmented reality experiences. Metrics that we learned from a QR code launched use case, being able to set those up correctly. XR opportunities beyond primary business objectives. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll also share an interactive AR demo of some of the work that we have underway. So as we talk about State Farm, just wanted to share just a little bit of glimpse about who we are. Not only are we a technology innovator, but we're also an industry leader, a good neighbor, and an employer of choice. So as an industry leader, we lead auto and homeowners insurance in the US. We're ranked 39th on the 2021 Fortune 500 list of the largest companies based on revenue. We're independent contractor exclusive with our State Farm agents, 86 million policies and accounts in force, and we handle about 22,000 fire and auto claims each day. We're also a technology innovator. Hundreds of active applications, developments, and projects. And we have over 6,000 IT employees. On average, State Farm sends about 15 million emails, 2 million IMs, and hosts about 17,000 Skype audio meetings a day. We're an employer of choice, which we're proud of. We do business more like a community than a company. Our different ideas, our backgrounds, our approaches all come together to influence how to work and help other customers. And then a good neighbor. State Farm has a long-standing commitment to excellence in environmental, social, and governance areas of work, working to reduce our environmental impact, and then empowering that good neighbor through grants, scholarships, community involvement, donations, and matching gifts programs. So we just wanted to share a little bit about that, as many of you may not be as familiar with State Farm. So when State Farm talks about XR, what we mean by XR is truly mixed reality, as well as virtual reality and augmented reality, and the work that we have underway to support that. And this has been a journey that we actually started in 2016. Within our IT department, we had a research and development area that specifically focuses on trying out new tech, really researching it, understanding the software, hardware components, and then really looking at prototypes, really getting under the hood of that tech to understand, could it be scalable? Is it something that we should go to market with that could really help our business? And in 2019, they made that decision that yes, it was. And so that technology moved over to my division, where we had to come up and think about how are we going to provide business use cases and what would we want to do to scale the mixed reality, AR and VR to the enterprise. I'm going to turn it over to Matt Burns, who's going to share a little bit about what was some of his favorite early workings when we were partnering with the research and development area, and then our journey from 2019, where we've taken the product and all those early learnings that went into that. Matt?
All right, thanks, Tasha. So before I move on, I really want to highlight one of my favorite prototypes from the early days when State Farm was looking at XR in the IT research and development phase. So this is going to date a lot of us who are enjoying this conference right now. This is going to be in relation to a commercial that is now more than a decade old. So this might make a few of you feel even older than maybe what you already do. But for those who can remember, who have seen this commercial, State Farm had a commercial where an actor would say, "Can I get a hot tub?" And then a hot tub would magically appear. That I don't know why, I just really like that commercial. And coincidentally, one of the early prototypes within our IT R&D area when they were looking through labs would be whether you were wearing a HoloLens through mixed reality or utilizing your phone, users could actually say, "Can I get a hot tub?" And then an augmented reality or mixed reality hot tub would poof appear in your room, just like it would be in the commercial. So I thought that would be kind of a fun one to share from back in the day. So from there, now that XR has joined our enterprise technology department, we really have a lot of work to do, and we've made a lot of progress so far. As it came over, and think about it coming from 2016, and everyone would even agree that today this technology is very much still in its infancy, and a lot of progress is going to be made over the next 5 to 10 years. So to think that we're adopting this from 2016 to 2019 is pretty quick when we're talking about such an infant product like this. But now that we had it, we have to come up with, well, we need a strategy. Where do we want to see this going in the next 3 to 5 years? What business opportunities exist? One of the most common questions I get is, how could State Farm possibly use XR? And you're going to get to see some use cases of that. Are we going to build an internal team? Again, Tasha noted we have over 6,000 IT employees at State Farm. So do we build an internal team? Do we just leverage vendors for this work? Or do we do a combination of both? And you'll see in some of the examples, we actually get a combination of both, where I have a small internal team made up of 4 developers, 1 artist, and 1 product owner. And then we leverage vendors when capacity dictates so. We have to bring in all the hardware and software. So think about virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality. There's so many paths that you could take. You could have one team literally doing nothing but focus on virtual reality and bringing in what virtual reality equipment do we bring in? What type of wearables do we bring in? From an augmented reality standpoint, again, what do we want to develop? Mobile native applications. We've got a State Farm mobile app, for example. Do we start developing augmented reality experiences directly within that mobile app? Do we explore looking at web augmented reality projects? And then, of course, bringing in all the software to make that a reality or to make that even possible. For my developers to be able to develop, they have to be able to get all of that software. And with that, as you can imagine, what probably most major companies have would be a risk and privacy process. So every time we're bringing in new hardware or software, we've got to vet that, because we don't want to introduce any new risk to the company, and especially our policy. We want to make sure that we're keeping their data safe and that we are exposing no risk that would be unwarranted. So that takes time to bring all of that in, and we're still doing that today. We're still continually bringing new technology in, especially because, again, with this being such an infant product, new technology is still being released all the time at a rapid pace, just as we get something new in, almost the next iterations out, because it comes so fast. Okay, great. Now we've got the hardware and software to build some augmented reality and virtual reality products. How are we going to host it? So not only that, but I have my team building the entire infrastructure needed for XR products, whether it's virtual reality or augmented reality. How are we going to host the files? So building a cloud-based setup from an infrastructure standpoint, where users can launch these experiences, and everything that goes around building and deploying around a new cloud infrastructure. So that's a big undertaking as well. And then probably where Tasha spends the most of her time, and then I spend a good chunk of my time as well, is the education and awareness. I touched on it just a little bit, where one of the first questions I have is State Farm. How can insurance use XR? The opportunities are almost limitless. They're really limited to your imagination. And so we spend a lot of that time going across our massive enterprise, helping educate, bring people up to speed. Not everybody knows what augmented reality is, for example. Most people have a decent understanding of virtual reality, but what's augmented reality? How does that differ from virtual reality? So it's this education and then coming up and bringing actual ideas, prototypes to really demo and showcase, to start getting the aha moments where they say, oh yes, this has real potential, at least to the point where we can experiment with it and start seeing some of the results from those experiments. So that's really been our journey so far, and we're still very much into many pieces within this journey, and some of that will probably never stop. But until you really get into a journey like this, you might not think of everything that goes into standing up an XR shop. So that's been State Farm's journey so far. Anything to add on that, Tasha?
No, the only thing I would add is just that important of your pitch. So if you're out there and you're considering trying to spin up some new XR opportunities at your own company, just making sure that you're taking the time for that storytelling and that you're going to put some energy into explaining how could this help your company? What is the ROI that you could expect to see? What are those key performance indicators that you're going to look at? And more importantly, what problem are you trying to solve? So we've been really trying to take that design thinking approach as we come up with any type of new idea that we want to take to market, and then really taking the time to socialize, understanding then what demographics you're going to want to target. Is this more for the millennial, Gen Z audiences, and explaining how this could help us. And then again, as Matt mentioned, really taking the time to demo it, helping them understand, why does this technology matter? How does this bring another interactive way to reach your customer base?
All right, now we're going to move on to the next part of the presentation, which is probably what a lot of you are excited to see, of how is State Farm leveraging XR. I'm going to show off a couple of our use cases. This is not all inclusive, but these are some use cases that I am able to share with this conference that should bring some good value and metrics with what we've seen so far with some of our XR products. When XR first came over to enterprise technology in 2019 from our IT R&D area, I was able to inherit a couple of extremely talented developers who were very well versed from a virtual reality development standpoint. We already had the tools needed to create virtual reality experiences. And coincidentally, we had a large business initiative spinning up that was going to allow us to have a very large space to have a lot of our employees go through a virtual reality experience. So this was a very, very exciting opportunity where the goal was to really create a virtual reality experience that would put employees, or really any user, into the customer's shoes as if they were the customer themselves, and put them into a situation that our customers commonly encounter. And then based off of real customer feedback that we receive on a day-to-day basis, we actually would build in certain pain points to the experience that as the user was going through this virtual reality experience, they would encounter those same pain points, with the entire goal of this being to build and drive empathy. So expose and experience a full digital experience where you look around and everything that you see is this digital world that we've created, and then build it in a way where maybe somebody's never encountered the specific situation before, but now as they're there, as if they're the customer experiencing a pain point, they're now the ones experiencing that pain point. And then at the end of the experience, really emphasizing, looking at CX principles. How could we improve this overall experience just from an ideation standpoint? How could we creatively make the experience better for our customers, again, based off of real feedback? We were getting decently into development, getting close to our first MVP release of it. And then an event hit that everybody is well aware of, which is COVID-19. So COVID-19 hit, and first of all, first of all, the country pretty much shut down for a couple of weeks and everyone started working from home where possible. So eventually we had to make a call to put this on hold, to shelve this, because think about it, when we're talking about virtual reality, we're talking about sharing headsets and passing a headset back and forth, even though you're sanitizing it. When we were in the midst of COVID-19, especially in 2020, that was the one thing that you didn't want to be doing. It would have been irresponsible to continue to allow headsets to be used or shared across customers while this event was going on. So we had to make a strategic decision to not completely get rid of the project, but to put it on pause, to put it on hold until things maybe start to get back to a little bit normal, which hopefully we're starting to see some of that now, and fingers crossed we see in the future. But if we're not going to be doing virtual reality, then what makes sense from an XR standpoint? Well, mixed reality. And when I think of mixed, an example of mixed reality would be like a HoloLens, for example, but that's still a headset. So that's not necessarily the best thing to be targeting during this time. But we decided to make the shift to augmented reality because from a smartphone and a smart tablet standpoint, they're already very much saturated in the marketplace and there's no need to share devices. Most adults, for example, have a modern smartphone. Not everybody does, but again, it's very much saturated into the marketplace. So that seemed like the obvious place to pivot to when COVID-19 came upon us. People could use their own devices and be able to go through various experiences that we would create. So we decided this is an example of we didn't have all of the technology brought in at this time as we're going through some of that journey that I had talked about in the prior slides. So we partnered with a really great vendor to help us create a web augmented reality experience for our State Farm Drive Safe and Save program. Tasha hinted at it earlier, and as a lot of other presentations you're likely seeing, millennials and Gen Z, XR really resonates with those target demographics a lot. So that's really what our primary target audience was for this experience as well. Something from my standpoint that I think is important is because we're going to be targeting and creating a web AR experience, it would have low friction. And what does that mean? A customer or user is not required to download any new specific app onto their device just to get the experience to work. So if we would require that, that's a big barrier to entry, where when you're targeting web AR, it naturally works on your phone or tablet's web browser. And so again, very low friction, and I think is going to continue to get better and better and bigger because of that sole fact. So what were we seeing? So as customers would receive a package from State Farm, for example, we would have a postcard that they would receive. And what they would do is the postcard would have a QR code on it, and it was created in a way that would hopefully be visually appealing. And it would basically say, hey, scan this QR code to bring this postcard to life. And hopefully some curiosity sets in of what does that mean, bring this postcard to life? So customers, what they would do is they would scan the QR code with their smartphone or smart tablet, and then utilizing image tracking that was on the postcard that they would receive, it would, in fact, bring the postcard to life from an augmented reality standpoint. You could kind of see it playing off on the side of the presentation as I was talking through it. And what did we see from that? We were hoping for about 15% of our users to scan the QR code, and coincidentally or incidentally, that's essentially exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing about 15% of people scan that QR code. And put yourself in that situation when you get mail or anything like that, even if it's with a company that you are part of, how often do you see an insert and then just kind of toss it aside without ever looking at it? So expecting a 100% scan rate probably wouldn't have been really realistic. But from a 15% standpoint, that was a really good adoption of what we were hoping to see from that standpoint. Something that I think really helped that was COVID-19 helped lead to more QR code adoption and just awareness. I would be surprised if anybody watching this presentation didn't see a restaurant that said to scan their QR code to launch their menu during COVID-19, because again, restaurants that were open, they weren't handing out menus, or most of them weren't handing out menus or physical items. In fact, they would just say, hey, scan our QR code. And in my opinion, that really helped generate that awareness and adoption. So that just coincidentally worked out. As we're sending a QR code, more and more of our customers or our users knew what a QR code would be from that. Out of the 15% who scanned the QR code, about 70% of those users granted access to the camera to get to the actual experience. So just because you scan the QR code and it launches to a browser, you're not home free as far as the experience automatically starting up. As most people know, you need to get access to a lot of the device's internal workings and sensors to be able to track and display an augmented reality experience. So all users would have to give access to the camera to allow those sensors to be activated essentially for the experience. So you would expect a natural drop off from that standpoint, because not everybody's comfortable with allowing that camera access. And then you might also expect a drop off because some people's devices might work on scanning a QR code, but they might not be modern enough to actually get into an AR experience. And then there would be other just natural reasons you would see drop off as well. So about 70% of the users who launched into the experience got into the experience. So they granted access to the camera and they actually got into the experience and could see it displaying on their phone. Our goal with this overall experience is really to help educate, motivate, and excite customers based on, again, a lot of customer feedback that we received, to help kind of alleviate issues such as like one that is wide open, but still always a concern. State Farm's not selling your data. And we want to make sure that we can talk through that in a fun, interactive way that gets a really important message point across and then gets customers over any hurdles where they might be concerned about something like that going on. And you would see that through the slide as it was playing through. So as we're going through that, 80% of users who got to that, who actually get into the experience, finish the experience. That actually greatly exceeded what we were expecting. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. One, the experience is created in a very fun, short, and interactive way. If you create a very boring experience that isn't appealing, you're probably going to see a pretty fast drop off. If you create an experience that isn't performance optimized and it doesn't run well on a phone, you're going to see a big drop off. If you create an experience that's 30 minutes long versus 2 minutes long, I don't need data to tell me which one of those is probably going to have a higher completion rate. I can use common sense on that one. And when you have a customer's attention, you want to be short, concise, get your points across, again, in a fun way. And this experience it doesn't even take 2 minutes to get all the way through it. So that's a big part of what I think helped get to that 80%. And then 74% of users who actually get into the experience click on that final call to action, which is to download the Drive Safe and Save app. So when they would click on that download the Drive Safe and Save app, it would launch to the respective store. And again, if you think about those numbers and that engagement, that's pretty good. And I would only expect that to continue to improve and increase as augmented reality and XR technology in general becomes more and more commonplace. Tasha, anything to add on this specific use case?
Yes, thanks, Matt. I think the thing that we would add here was we wanted to really figure out, was there interest in the marketplace? If we threw something out there, would we see anybody scan it? Would we see anybody want to interact? And to continue watching that AR experience enough to then download the app and finish what we were needing them to do. And as Matt mentioned, even though we only saw that 15% scan rate, that told us that there was interest. So that really helped us then get some more business cases lined up to say, okay, for our roadmap now for the rest of 2021 and 2022, we do see interest, there is value, and go ahead and creating more experiences and getting them out to door. Again, some of that early conversation that I talked about earlier is all around how do you socialize and get buy-in that these types of technologies are wanted by our customers and policyholders, and how do we make sure that we're articulating that, and more importantly, leading with data. So this test was trying to take something simple, lightweight, on a product that's very well known in the industry, and how could we make a fun, creative way to get them to continue downloading our app. So again, all about that testing. And then before scaling, understanding, do you have the interest? Are you looking at the metrics? And are they taking that call to action based off that? Because one thing that you as a company that you'll want to consider is you don't want to just create things to waste money. It's going to have to bring that ROI back to the company. And so testing anything that you do with a small user group and getting that reaction and metrics will be very, very important before scaling.
Perfect. Thanks, Tasha. For our final use case, we're going to be focusing on State Farm's new Tech Astra program. Tech Astra is a youth girl STEM program that's engineered to inspire, educate, and motivate young female students about what's possible in the world of science, technology, engineering, and math. And this is a really fun use case that we created internally with my development team, with the goal of creating a very fun, interactive, augmented reality experience where we try to highlight multiple facets of STEM. We created this with A-Frame, which has both pros and cons, as with probably everything. The biggest con is, as of now, iOS does not natively support viewing A-Frame in augmented reality with Safari yet. And hopefully that capability gets added in the future. But as of now, for iOS users who actually would want to view this project with in native augmented reality, they would need to launch it through a free app that's available on the store. From an Android standpoint, A-Frame AR actually does natively work very, very well with modern Android devices with Chrome. And then another positive about A-Frame is the fact that it naturally kind of builds in an interactive 360-degree, what we call desktop experience that's available that we can leverage to share this experience with users who are on a laptop or desktop as well. Touching back on iOS, if they launch the experience natively through Safari, they'll still be able to go through the experience. It'll just play a little bit similar to what that interactive desktop experience looks like, where they don't necessarily see it in their room, but they can use their phone's sensors to move and look around the environment. So that's at least a plus. These were all outlined to our business partners and our stakeholders as we were saying what different technologies we could leverage, and then the pros and cons that came with each one of these technologies, where they then went the route with being okay with some of the limitations that currently came with A-Frame specifically, and then the short time frame that we had to work with, which I'm going to cover in the next slide, which I think is important as you're working with stakeholders. Again, as this technology is continuing to advance and mature, there's likely going to be a lot of pros and potentially some cons, and being straightforward and upfront with that and allowing them to have big buy-in and select what makes the most sense for their business or what makes the most sense for them. Again, that's how you're going to build and drive a lot of that adoption. All right, so this project was a great opportunity to partner for a great cause and really showcase how quickly a fun and interactive augmented reality experience can be created. It would be very difficult to be aware of every single program that's going on and their lifetime within their specific roadmap across an enterprise as large as State Farm. And so we got connected to State Farm Tech Astra a little late in the game, where they were looking to launch a new Tech Astra website in the next 4 weeks. We thought that it was such a great experience, and this is actually something that Tasha was able to kind of sync up with, recognize that there would be some really great value with this, and as part of that adoption and education, really helped bring us the teams together. But we really, even though there was such a short time frame before the big website launch, we thought, how amazing would it be to be able to help create an experience that could be sent to the youth girls as an example of something that they'll be able to create within the world of STEM in the future. And so we had an aggressive team goal of, within 3.5 weeks, essentially, we had to come up with from scratch what it was we were even going to create, storyboard it out, develop it, test it, and then get it implemented to coincide with that website launch in a 4-week time period. It was playing kind of on the side as I'm going through this slide, but you can scan this QR code today and it will actually take you to this experience as well. So you can experience that yourself. But this was a perfect example of showing how quickly these products can be created and how fun that they can be. And then again, looking for that fun engagement that drives awareness and adoption, that then again, as was hinted at the beginning during the key learning opportunities, would be you don't just have to focus on what your business's primary business objectives are. So for State Farm, that's insurance, for example. This is an example of something that State Farm's doing that isn't focusing specifically 100% on insurance, but where we are able to see and recognize that there's probably some really good value that we could add to this specific program running within State Farm. So again, after this presentation, I think you're going to get a printout of this, or you can replay this video afterwards. Go ahead and scan the QR code to try the experience out yourself. Anything to add with this one, Tasha?
Yeah, I think just going back again, as I talk about things that you want to test with this one, as Matt mentioned, with not it being focused primarily on insurance, but really focusing on giving back to the community, thinking about how do we grow our future footprint? How do we continue to grow women in the field of IT? And we saw that as an opportunity to not only draw the interest for that STEM program, but also get our name out there in recognition, encourage sign up, because it was a fun, interactive way for that demographic to continue signing up through our desktop for Tech Astra event. And then also a quick, easy way, again, to show augmented reality across different leaders within State Farm, again, to show that something is possible. There is a team here that exists that can create things fairly quickly, and to be able to show, a demo out there, again, to help get buy-in to those larger things that we may want to do with some of our core products. So Matt and the team did a great job. Again, sharing that timeline is just something, again, as business, that you'll want to think through, that it may not be your bread and butter app, but what are those ways from a philanthropic or other types of things that you can still get the testing that you need to be a successful product team?
Perfect. One last thing that I want to share with this slide is a piece of feedback, and getting feedback is critically important for any business. So one of the youth girls who went through this experience gave us feedback that, hey, this should be turned into a game. So maybe in future years of the Tech Astra program, we might see this experience expanding and becoming more advanced. So again, I think that's really important as you're developing, as well as making sure you're getting that user feedback, that customer feedback, especially from your target demographics if possible, and utilizing that as you're creating your experience.
Okay, well, thanks for the time today and joining us. As we're wrapping up, some of the things that we just wanted to recap and that State Farm learned early on: XR adoption and standing it up at scale is a journey. It's going to take some time. Bringing new skills and roles to your workforce, that was something that we had to do. We had to recruit, for example, 3D modelers. We had to recruit developers that understood this technology. Having the time to understand the infrastructure, where were we going to host it, and having time to stand up those environments so that we could be ready to develop this. As I mentioned earlier, that education and buy-in at all levels of the organization is critical. So having that go-to-market plan, having that pitch type concepts in every presentation that you do, so that they can understand what problem are you trying to solve, what value add or ROI is this going to give to the company, and then feedback from the customers, the end user, as Matt mentioned, and then what's the next steps? How are you going to scale? Who are you going to test with before doing any type of large adventures? Again, you don't want to put that money into it and not get that return. So testing is super critical. And then blending XR into digital platforms creates those experiences that delight the customers. As you think about future technology, we want to all interact with our consumers in different ways, and XR really stands that up for the future as we approach this new working model where many of us are working remote or working from home. There is an opportunity to interact through those devices that have saturated the market, which is those smartphones. And how can we take advantage of just that camera? And that's truly all you need to be able to interact with those AR experiences. So thanks for your time today. Again, Matt and I just wanted to be able to share with you just a little bit about State Farm and what we're doing with that journey of XR. Thanks for the time. Now we're going to open it up for any Q&A that any of you might have or any questions that Matt and I can help answer.